Okay, so this is Illustrator. I've just opened up a blank page, and all I've done is I've set up over on my right hand side three panels that I'm going to use. So I've got properties, layers and swatches. Now those can be turned on through the Windows menu by clicking on them, so they come over here, and they're the ones you're going to be using most often. Left hand side I've got a bunch of tools. The one I'm going to concentrate on first of all is this one here, which is the pen tool, and you'll see if I hold down on it and then move across and click on this end section, I can make this float, which is really useful because I'm going to use all four of these tools. Okay, before I draw anything, I'm going to come over and I'm going to explain layers to you. So at the moment I'm on layer 1, and I'm going to call layer 1, I'm going to call it square, and you'll see why in a moment. So I'm on layer 1, I'm working on layer 1, I'm going to get my pen and I'm just going to draw. I'm going to click and I'm going to click and make roughly a square. You can see the guides kicking in to try and help me. Now what's important is you'll see on the cursor here, when I hover over the very last point, I get this circle popping up next to the pen tool. You see that? That means if I click again now, that creates a sealed shape. Okay, so all those lines have joined up. What that means is now, if I want to do things to this this square, I can click into my properties, use my selection tool and select it. So once I've selected this particular shape, you can see at the moment it's got a fill color of white and the stroke is 1 point. It's so skinny I can hardly see it. I'm going to change this stroke so you can see it by making it much thicker. So you can see as I click through there, that gets bigger. If I change the fill color and make it a much more obvious color, now you can see how easily I can change these colors around. It's really simple using this properties panel. Okay, I'm done with that for the minute. Now I'm going to click off it, so I'm going to deselect and I'm going to go back to my layers panel, and I'm going to now choose and make a new layer. I go down the bottom here, click on new layer. This second layer I'm going to call triangle. Okay, and I'm now going to lock my first layer so I can't accidentally draw on it, and I'm going to work on my triangle layer. In fact, I can turn this one off so I can't even see it by getting the eye clicked there. So I'm going to come back to my pen tool and I'm going to do my clicking again. This time you can see it's already picked up from the last time the properties. So I want to change those properties. Usually it's better to draw without fill switched on so you can see where the lines are going. I'm going to select this again. Okay, so if I didn't do it straight away, I can just select it like this, and I'm going to change this fill color, make it a blue color, and I'm going to change the line color and make that stand out somehow, maybe make that a green color. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my layers. On my layers now I'm going to switch my first one back on again, and I'm going to take the lock off. So you can see I've got two layers, and what's interesting is if I move this around, that my triangle layer is in front of my square layer. If I want to reverse that, literally all I do is drag my layer and put it underneath. So it's really easy to manipulate these things and move them around. Okay, I'm going to come back to my square layer. I'm going to lock off my triangle and close it. On my square layer I'm going to show you a couple of things. Okay, this tool here is my anchor point tool. If I use this one, any anchor point, any of those places where I clicked to draw and grab it and drag, it turns from a square anchor into a curved anchor. Now if I do it the wrong way by accident, I haven't let go yet, it ties a knot in it, so you've got to watch which way you pull. Okay, and you can move these handles around to get any kind of shape that you want. If I want to come back to that later, okay, so this selection tool here, this one called the selection tool, moves the whole thing, or I can grab like one part of it and stretch it. But if I want to move a particular anchor point, I go for this one, which is the direct selection tool. This one allows me to click just on an anchor point and move just that. So it's quite easy to manipulate my shapes. Okay, now this is where these other two tools come in. So if I click on this one, I can add an anchor point. So for instance, if I want to put another point in here, I can go on my line and click. You can see it's put that little square on there. If I'm not sure about the little anchor point, I can use the Z button, and that gives me the zoom in. So you can see now there's that anchor point when I've zoomed in. I'm going to flick back to my direct selection tool, grab that anchor point, and I can drag that one out now. Okay, I'm going to add another one in. I'm going to click my selection tool, come over here, click another one, direct selection tool, pull that one out. Okay, I'm going to go back to my zoom tool, clicking Z on the keyboard, and now if I hold down Alt, watch the magnifying plus turns to a minus. If I now click the mouse, I zoom out. Now what I want to be able to do, and the other thing to mention, like Photoshop, spacebar gives you the move tool. If I want to get rid of an anchor point, I've decided I don't need this one in there, or I want to join this one direct to this one, all I do is use this tool, the -1, and click, and it will remove. So it's as simple as that. Okay, so there's one more thing I want to show you. We haven't saved yet, obviously. Saving is pretty straightforward. You do File, Save As, and you choose the give it a name and choose the Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator as the file type for the moment. I'm going to go back to my layers. This time I'm going to switch off and lock my square, and I'm going to turn my triangle back on again. Why do I want to do that? Well, I want to show you one other thing that's quite cool. We've already looked in swatches and seen that if we select something, we can change the colors of it. There are various options where you can put gradient fills and things in, and you can edit those gradients afterwards by using the gradient tool over here, and that will allow you to change how they look and move things around on them, and it affects the gradient and so on. But what I want to show you is how we can put materials and things like that into a shape, our own patterns. So I'm going to deselect, I'm going to select, and I'm going to basically bring in my own pattern into here. So I'm going to go File, and I'm going to choose a thing called Place. Now what I've done is I've already on my desktop got a folder called Backgrounds, and I grabbed a bunch of Google images which are just patterns of various sorts. I'm going to go for this green and yellow one, and I'm going to double click that. Now all it's doing is saying where do I want to place it. I'm just going to bung it anywhere on the page for now, so I'm going to put it there. I'm now going to use my selection tool, and watch what happens. I'm going to drag this into my swatches. Now I've got it added into my swatch by here. Okay, I don't need this one on the desktop anymore. I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to bring one more in, and I'm going to do the same thing. So File and Place, and I'm going to choose this one. I think this orange gradient, and I'm going to say place that one, and I'm going to do the same thing. Put it down somewhere. You can see it's a slightly different size. Drag it into my swatches over here, and then delete the original. Okay, so if I want to put one of these patterns into my shape, I select my shape, go over to my pattern, and click it, and it goes in there. And I can swap it for another one, and so on. Now what might be useful, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to make this a lot bigger now so we can see a bit more of the detail of it, is how we edit the pattern once it's in my shape. So imagine in my shape, in fact let's select my shape again, and we'll make the outside stroke black so we can see it more clearly. There we go. Okay, so on here now, what I want to be able to do is make this pattern bigger, but without actually changing the shape or the size of my triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically go inside it. I'm going to double click it. Now watch what happens up here. If I double click it, it's now said I'm inside that area. Once I'm inside the area, I'm going to choose my scale tool over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the key on my keyboard, which is underneath the escape key, which looks like a tilde. It's like a wave almost, and I'm going to hold that one down, and at the same time I'm going to drag, and you can see what happens now. Every time I go to my anchor point, hold down that button and drag with my mouse, it's going to make that pattern go bigger or smaller depending on the direction that I push and pull that thing on. So you can see how I've changed that now. Okay, I'm going to go out of this one for the minute. I'm going to come back out, and I'm going to change my pattern again because I want to show you something else with the same tool. So I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to go back into my swatches. I'll change for this one. Okay, I might want to move the position of the pattern inside. So that just now we changed the scale of it, and we did that by double clicking on it, which I'm going to do again, and I held down, I chose the scale tool, and I used the tilde button on my keyboard. This time I'm only going to use the tilde button on the keyboard. I'm not going to click the scale button because I'm not scaling it now. I'm literally just moving it. So you can see as I move my pattern, my triangle stays in the same place. So I can come back out of it when I'm happy, and that's my shape done. I'll use my zoom to come back out to show you a little bit clearer. So minus it out, and there you go. So it's very easy to manipulate using your tools. I haven't used many tools at all there to do this, and I can go back in and I can edit at any point. I can zoom back in if I'm not happy with the position of something, or I want to round that off again. I can basically come over here, say right, I'm going to round this corner here, and I'm going to pull that into a rounded shape. I can come back in at any point point later and change the handle to affect my shapes. I can use my selection tool to move my shape, and so on. So it's actually quite simple to build up a drawing using Illustrator. The main thing to remember is it's important to use separate layers for separate shapes, so it's easy to edit them because you can turn them on and off, you can lock them in place and so on, and naming them is really useful. Okay, I'm going to show you one other now and show you how complicated it can get. So I'm going to open up a new one, and it's one that I did earlier, so I'm going to open up one called, so I've got one here which is called Comic Con Poster 2. I'm going to open that one, and you're going to see this one is a far more complicated design. Look at all the layers I've got here. In fact, within the layers they produce sub layers when I put other shapes on them. So I can do the same thing, I can turn things on and off. I've named them so I know what they are. So this is the Batman symbol. So over here I've got my Batman symbol. If I turn that off, it's gone. I've got my background coloured selections. Okay, and I've used those ideas of bringing the images in and playing around with them. And I've got a bunch of lines, and I've got my text. So this is a much more complicated version, but it's done in exactly the same way as the one I've just shown you. Okay, good luck with yours.